Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle are all names of philosophers that you've most likely heard of. Today, I'm going to be talking about Diogenes. He was a cynical Greek philosopher and was actually one of the founders of Cynicism. He was born in Sinope, an Ionian colony on the Black Sea coast of Anatolia. He was either born in 1412 or 404 BCE. Nothing is really known about his early life, but the first thing that is known just starts off insane. His father, Hicesius, was a banker. It seems likely that Diogenes was also in the banking business. His father taught him and he'd help him out. At some point, the exact date isn't known because it's just so far back. At some point, Hicesius and Diogenes became involved in a scandal involving the debasement of their currency. So Diogenes was exiled from the city and he lost his citizenship and all of his material possessions. This aspect of the story is proven by archaeology because there's large numbers of defaced coins and they say the name of Hicesius on them as the official who minted them. After the currency scandal, he traveled to Athens and made it his life's goal to challenge established customs and values. In simple terms, if it's commonplace to eat with silverware, Diogenes would eat with his hands. You'll see as I tell stories from Diogenes' life why he was such a notable figure in philosophy and in history. When he arrived in Athens, he arrived with his slave named Maine. Shortly after arriving, Maines escaped from him, and with his characteristic humor, Diogenes dismissed this ill fortune by saying, if Maines can live without Diogenes, why not Diogenes without Maines? Diogenes would mock such a relation of extreme dependency. He found the figure of a master who could do nothing for himself but make his slave work helpless. The stories told of Diogenes illustrate the logical consistency of his character. He lived in a clay wine jar in the middle of the marketplace. It belonged to the temple of Cybele. Another time, Diogenes witnessed a boy drinking from his hands, so he decided to destroy the single wooden bowl he possessed. Fool that I am to have been carrying superficial baggage all this time. Another story, he used to stroll around in broad daylight with a lamp. When asked what he was doing, he would answer, I am looking for an honest man. Apart from just harassing people walking down the street, Diogenes had nothing but disdain for Plato and his abstract philosophy. Plato once described Diogenes as a Socrates gone mad. According to Diogenes, when Plato gave the tongue-in-cheek definition of man as a featherless biped, Diogenes took a chicken and plucked every single feather off of it. He then brought it to Plato's academy in front of all of his students, saying, behold, I've brought you a man. So after that, the academy added with broad, flat nails to the definition. Diogenes taught by living example. He tried to demonstrate that wisdom and happiness don't have to belong to someone who follows societal norms. Diogenes said to have eaten in the marketplace, urinated on people who insulted him, defecated in the theater, and masturbated in public. He then said, if it were only as easy to banish hunger by rubbing my belly, he'd also just flip people off that walk by him. It's not known whether Diogenes was insulted with the term doggish and just made a virtue of it, or whether he was the one who came up with the dog theme himself. When asked why he was called a dog, he replied, I fawn on those who give me anything. I yelp at those who refuse, and I set my teeth in rascals. Diogenes believed humans beings live artificially and hypocritically and would do well to study in the dog. Besides performing natural body functions in public with ease, a dog will eat anything and make no fuss about where to sleep. Dogs live in the present without anxiety and have no use for the pretensions of abstract philosophy. Dogs are thought to know instinctively who is friend and who is foe, unlike human beings who either dupe others or are duped. Along with Antisthenes and Crates of Thebes, Diogenes is considered one of the founders of Cynicism. Cynic ideas are inseparable from Cynic practice. Therefore, what we know about Diogenes is contained in all of the things he did rather than the things he wrote down or said. Although Socrates had previously identified himself as belonging to the world rather than a city, Diogenes is credited with the first known use of the word cosmopolitan. When he was asked from where it came, He replied, "I am a citizen of the world," or cosmopolitan, an exile and outcast, a man with no social identity. Diogenes still managed to make a mark on his contemporaries and philosophy itself. According to a story which seems to have originated with Menippus of Gondra, Diogenes was captured by pirates while on voyage, and sold as a slave in Crete to a Corinthian named Xeniades. Being asked his trade, he replied that he knew no trade but that of governing men, and that he wished to be sold to a man who needed a master. Xeniades liked his spirit and hired Diogenes to tutor his children. As a tutor to Xeniades' 2 sons, it is said that he lived in Corinth for the rest of his life, which he devoted to preaching the doctrines of self-control. Although most of the stories about his living in a jar are located in Athens, there are some accounts of his living in a jar near the Cranium Gymnasium in Corinth. Also in Corinth, there was a meeting between Alexander the Great and Diogenes that is supposed to have taken place. These stories might just be made up, but a lot of people believe them. Diogenes recounts that he exchanged only a few words. While Diogenes was relaxing in the morning sunlight, Alexander, thrilled to meet the famous philosopher, asked if there was any favor he could do for Diogenes. He replied, "Yes, stand out of my sunlight." Alexander then declared, "If I were not Alexander, then I should wish to be Diogenes." Diogenes then replied to that statement, "If I were not Diogenes, I would still wish to be Diogenes." When it comes to Diogenes' death, there are lots of accounts. His contemporaries allege that he held his breath until he expired, being done with life, so he just decided to end it. Although other accounts of his death say that he had become ill from eating raw octopus or suffered an infected dog bite, which are much more likely to be true. When he asked how he wished to be buried, he left instructions on a little note to be thrown outside the city wall so wild animals could feast on his body. When he asked if he minded this, he said, "Not at all, as long as you provide me with a stick to chase the creatures away." When asked how he could use a stick since he would lack awareness, he replied, "If I lack awareness, why should I care what happens to me when I'm dead?" To the end, Diogenes made fun of people's excessive concern with the proper treatment of the dead. I'm sure you can see now why Diogenes was an important figure in philosophy and history. Thank you for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, and comment on what you want to see next. Have a good rest of your day, and I hope you enjoyed.
Niggas in the house and they hate y'all. Single ear boys, flexing like the chords. Great men come alive again on the cross.